Welcome to the update section for the Bury My Heart with Tonawanda film. Today we are here with Robert Djed Snead, who is going to be one of the actors in the film. Robert is an actor, author, poet, and professional storyteller. We met Robert when we saw him act with the Akwaaba Heritage Associates. We were very impressed with his talents. What drew you to be in Bury My Heart with Tonawanda?
Adrian Esposito.
He's a good salesman.
Well, it's a thing of his vision and his sincerity. You know, I didn't even have to read the story. I didn't even have to read the script, the plot. Adrian himself. Again, I know he did that piece with Dr. Anderson.
Yes, he did.
And I was so impressed with that, basically, if he's involved in it and he wants to see this forth, you know, I'm in his corner.
And with people like Djed being in this film, it's bound to be a success. Robert, could you tell us a little bit about Akwaaba, the Heritage Associates?
Akwaaba is an organization that was formed 10 years ago, and it basically tries to bring forth the African-American experience, the historical African-American experience through historical reenactments. We'll go anywhere from the turn of the century 1800s up to the present, 1960s, 1970s to the present.
Oh, wonderful. Mm-hmm. And they're really wonderful performances. Djed, could you tell us a little bit about your latest project? I know that you just wrote a play and you got some funding for it through New York State.
Yeah. I wrote a play called The Devoted Disciples. And The Devoted Disciples is a fictitious gospel group. Basically, the plot is 4 African Americans will be in that fictitious group called the Devoted Disciples. One will be a native Rochesterian who's been here probably a generation or two. The other 3 will have moved up to the Rochester area, Monroe County area, within the last 5 to 10 years. And what I want to explore is, what did African Americans experience moving from the rural South or the urban South to the North? And how did they perceive Rochester? You know, in 1964, we had the riots.
Yes.
And many people say that part of that was African Americans were shunned from jobs, the housing was poor and things like that. So the play will be set in December of 1964. So I'll be able to bring in the riots. I'll be able to bring in, again, the African Americans who've moved up here. Have they been able to find jobs? Have they been able to find housing? What part of the city are they living in? The play was actually accepted by the Arts and Cultural Council of Monroe County under the Individual Artist Grant Program. So I did get a little bit of funding to be able to do that, buy some tapes and stuff. So I'm already in the process. Part of the things that I wrote in the proposal was to interview between 10 and 20 African Americans who had moved to Rochester between 1955 and 1965, and get their stories and use their actual historical stories to facilitate the dialogue, the histories, the experiences of the people in the play. So I'll be using the actual interviews that I'll be doing with these 10 to 20 African Americans who moved up here during that period to flesh out the characters in the play.
It sounds fascinating. It sounds like something that should go national.
Oh yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Should be, it's a play, right? It's not a film.
Well, you know, it's interesting. As I developed the idea, it started off as just a play. But now I'm actually videotaping the interviews I'm doing with these individuals, and I can very easily see a documentary coming out of this process. Some of my background, my father and 3 of my uncles formed a gospel group in 1956. Our family moved up here in 56, And the moment they came up here, they formed a gospel group called the Morning Stars of East Williamson, New York. So kind of, sort of, this is biographical.
It's a family story.
A family story.
Family story.
In the background. In the background.
Those are the best,
Yes,
because that's
yes.
what you know about.
Vested interest, yeah. And it was my experience. I mean, I remember being 8, 9, 10 years old, going to gospel programs and just the energy. And the people that I've already interviewed, as I've talked to them, they talked about community. That members of one gospel group would sing with the others. Members of, maybe if they didn't have a bass player, this guy from this group would fill in with this group. So there wasn't the competition. It was all about community and making sure that the word of God was sung in those churches. So it's a fascinating process.
It sounds fascinating. I can't wait to see it.
Yep.
You're also an author, and you've written some children's books.
Yes.
You want to tell us about those? And
well,
you hold them up,
again, as a storyteller, I am fascinated with Aesop. I love Aesop because of the morals. I love Aesop because of, I like this word, pithiness of his stories, the shortness.
Fables.
Aesop fables. But one of the things about Aesop is because his stories were so short, they don't really lend themselves to storytelling. So what I would do is take an Aesop fable and elongate it and add characters and flesh it out. There's a story called The Lion and the Gnat. And it's a real short story, and the moral is great. But when I read it, I said, I want to tell the story, and I want to share that moral with students, with children, and other audiences too. And from that story, The Lion and the Gnat, using my imagination, I came up with Nasty Nathan, the no-good gnat who never listened to nobody. And so basically the plot is Nathan the Gnat goes around bothering Mr. Giraffe, Mr. Lion, and Mr. Monkey, causing each one harm. And eventually Nathan makes Mr. Monkey fall out of the tree. And then as he's flying away laughing, he actually is not paying attention and ends up in a spider's web. And Mrs. Spider is bearing down on him, getting ready to eat him. So that's the way this one ends. So, I told that story for a number of years. And as I would talk to the children, about what got Nathan into trouble, one of the things that kept recurring is they say, please don't let Mrs. Spider eat him. Please, he was bad and he was bothering people, but, give him another chance. So I went back and I thought about it, and I created this story called Nice Nathan, the good gnat who never bothered nobody no more, because he learned his lesson. And the way he learned his lesson was, and I've talked to ministers and I've talked to other adults, and if you can imagine being caught in the spider's web, and you see, the spider coming ready to eat you, the way he gets free is just before Mrs. Spider gets there, a strong gust of wind comes and blows him free. Why that gust of wind came, how it came, all of those things are for whoever, whatever your imagination wants. But the point of the matter is he was free. And the first thing he does is go home and apologize to his parents, because they had tried to teach him right from wrong, and he knew it, he heard it, but he wasn't listening. So in this book, Nathan goes and he apologizes to his parents. He apologizes to Mr. Lion, Mr. Giraffe, but he can't find Mr. Monkey. And he finds Mrs. Monkey, and Mrs. Monkey is crying because when Nathan made her husband fall out of the tree, he had a concussion, and then hunters found him, and now they have him in a box. They have him in a box, and they're getting ready to take him to a zoo far away. So the story evolves that Nathan has to figure out a way to make amends, to make things right. And because of his size and because of his tenacity, he's able to help Mr. Monkey get free.
Okay, tell us one more time where we can get in touch, how people can get in touch with you. It's just through your website?
The website is the best way, and my phone number, as well as on the website there are links to storytelling clips I've done, historical reenactments. If I can, one of the things that I've really gotten involved with in the last 8 years now is doing historical reenactments of one particular man. His name is the Reverend Jermain Wesley Loguen. He was born around 1809, 1812, somewhere in that. He was born a slave, so he doesn't know exactly when he was born. But when he died, he was born a slave in Manscoes Creek, Tennessee. But when he died on September 30th, 1872, he had risen to become a bishop in the AME Zion Church. And to me, his story is so inspirational. His legacy has kind of gotten lost in time. He was a fellow co-worker with Frederick Douglass. In fact, Frederick Douglass's son married his daughter. He lived in Syracuse most of his adult life, so he had interactions with Harriet Tubman. He knew John Brown intimately, and all of these people respected what he did. But again, not everybody can rise to the top and have their story told, but I do historical reenactments of him to bring his life and legacy back to the consciousness of people today. As I said earlier, he's so inspirational. They called him the king of the Underground Railroad. He helped over 1,500 people escape through Syracuse up to Canada or to Rochester or wherever they wanted to go. He and his wife Caroline were actually conductors on the Underground Railroad in Syracuse, New York. This famous thing called the Jerry Rescue, which is another thing that has been lost in time. He and the Vigilance Committee of Syracuse, New York, actually freed a person who had been arrested under the fugitive slave law from jail. A mob, they call it a mob. He and several others went into the jail, took Jerry out, and took him up to Mexico, New York, and then up to Oswego, and then over Lake Ontario to Kingston. But this made national news because somebody had actually fought the law. The fugitive slave law was the law, and they could have been in prison, they could have been put in jail, they could have been fined, but he was so determined that no one would be taken as a fugitive from Syracuse that he was willing to, put up everything that he had. And so it's a wonderful story. So the Reverend Jermain Wesley Loguen is the historical reenactments that I do, and anytime I get a chance to do that, I'm more than willing.
Well, I hope you get some calls to do that. I really do. And in terms of Bury My Heart with Tonawanda, we're doing very well. It seems to us that we are close to meeting our goal, and I want to thank everybody who has supported us and donated to us. Thank you very much.